Hello, ladies, and welcome to LOL Living Out Loud. This is season 4, and our theme for the season is freestyle. It's whatever. So grab your girls, grab a drink, grab a pen, grab your journal, and meet me here at LOL Living Out Loud. Hello, ladies, and welcome to LOL Living Out Loud. It has been a minute, so I hope everyone is doing well. All of our listeners, the LOL fam, with COVID, as we are starting to move out of COVID. And by the way, note, get that vaccination, y'all. Okay, so all of that being said, get your girls, get your pen, get the drink of your choice, and join us here at LOL. So tonight, ladies, I have our girl chat. We got Sammy, we got Marty, we got
Hey,
Fancy, we got
hola.
Corey, and then there's me, Rena. So,
Hey.
otherwise known as Val. So, we're going to talk about some stuff. And I'm going to start us off. We're going to talk about, I don't know if you guys saw it, but the Aretha Franklin biopic that, um, I don't know, what was on Hulu, y'all?
National
Uh-huh.
Geographic and
Geographic.
National
Hulu. Hulu is
Geographic.
carrying it.
Yeah, and Hulu's carrying it. And, and then from there, we're going to move into a conversation about sexuality. Now, wait a minute. It's not what you think. I'm not asking you about your favorite position or how to get your freak on. Not that sexuality.
Well,
We're
dang,
going to
I'll
be
see
talking about
y'all later.
sexuality
Like,
and
darn it.
how it creates who we are, and we're going to get more into that because Marty is going to help me develop that whole idea, because frankly I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, but she does. So when we get there, I'll let you know. But just for a footnote, we can have a conversation one day about positions and how to get your orgasm on and stuff, just not
Oh,
tonight.
All
okay
All
right.
right.
then.
So
I'll be back then. No,
who saw Riri? Who saw the show and what y'all think about it?
I
Woo.
saw it,
So, Viv,
and
what did you think about it?
I
Any
get
part that really just stood out for you?
well. What I got overall was I understood why the family did not, why Aretha's family did not support that particular biopic. It
Mm,
was very, it was very salacious, and it was very this I get why she was the way she was
mm.
in the in regard to watching that biopic.
And when you
And
say the way she was, what do you mean? How do you perceive her to have been?
because she well, I perceived her how she presented. I am regal. I get my money first. Uh, I carry my purses here on stage. You will pay me first, and then I will perform, because she had too many incidents of depending on other people to collect and do what they were supposed to do, and they just cheated her, and you could tell they were cheating her. And watching other people ride what they saw in her, I see a star, I see a superstar. Quick, let me attach my wagon to this superstar.
Mm,
And when you have, and also that her father was a narcissist, and that came out quick.
mhm.
I want what I want. If you get hurt in the process, hey, that's okay. These things happen. I'm still your daddy. You gotta love me. It was so it was a lot to take in. I have to admit, I binge watched it. Um, and there were moments where I was just like, what?
Yeah, right.
She's 12. You take her out on the road. You don't make sure she has a chaperone. You want to get your freak on, and you leave your 12-year-old daughter alone in
Yeah.
the midst of wolves.
So
And
let's jump off on that right there. So I got to ask out those who watched it, how do you see her father's relationship with her and the stuff? I don't want to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and the stuff. It's quiet. Lori, did
Well,
you watch it?
I mean, yeah, I just found the entire relationships, the relationships and interrelationships and external relationships, the internal relationships, I found them all to be extremely dysfunctional at its core. Um, like I said, the father, he was, I had heard things because um, of where I'm from, because
Mm.
he actually, and they left that part out of the movie, I will say, because the mother was from Buffalo, New York. I don't know if you all got that in the picture. She was from Buffalo and she's actually buried there right now. That's where
Right.
they buried her. But they never talked about when he came and pastored the church there. He pastored Friendship Baptist Church for probably about 2 years
Mm.
before he
Mhm.
ended up in Detroit. And it was like he had a pattern. And you saw the established patterns that he had created starting in Memphis. He went to Memphis. He and when you saw the reality that the mother was pregnant at the same time as some 12-year-old child down
Mm.
there, then you look
Right.
at Aretha when she got pregnant, there's a lot of dysfunction there. And it was also implied that he may have been one of the people that actually got her pregnant.
Mm.
So that was
Right.
always, something that was always rumored as I was growing up. But I saw his dysfunction, and it was just like, it's like a corporation. If the CEO is dysfunctional, everything else is going to be dysfunctional within that entire organization. And the family was, I saw, and again, I'm just stating what I saw. They smoked more cigarettes and drank more brown liquor than anybody I know. I mean, had straight up
Listen,
parties at
party.
at
He
the
liked to
parsonage,
party.
at the pastor's house. I mean, and I'm just saying, like, wow. I mean, and we in the Black community have always seen our ministers and pastors as we have seen them as, okay, you should be examples, kind of thing. And so that was a really dysfunctional example. And so you can only imagine what else was going on in this church. I saw well, before we get too far in there, I saw the biggest thing that stood out to me though was from the very beginning of the movie. Well, they kept going back and forth,
Right.
because once they stated something, they would give you context. They would
Right.
take you back and say, "Now, I don't really like it in This Is Us." You know how I feel about
Right.
that. But for Aretha's biopic, I see why it was necessary, because when they said something, they took you back to, this is why
It
this is
looks like
happening
this.
right now. So it really gave you that automatic and immediate context. The biggest thing when they were riding down to Abashold, Mississippi, what was it
Yeah,
called? Like
yeah.
something like
Yeah.
Mississippi.
that.
Hmm.
And those white men stopped when their car messed up
Right.
and the car
Yeah.
conked out. The white men got out of the car and they started busting out the windows. And Ree was it, and they call her Ree.
Right.
She was in the back seat, and the father went to protect her. But I don't know if you guys caught that symmetry there. That was the only time her father protected
That's
her.
what it are.
In
Yeah.
That is
retrospect, and
true.
he says, "You, I'ma always protect you, Ree. You ain't got to worry about nothing." So yes, Vivian, to your point, that was one major thing that I saw. She could not trust anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually
And
saw her father only
yeah,
protect the women that he was supposed to love, his wife, when against the white men as well. But the biggest predator in the whole situation was
was
C.L.
him.
Franklin. Now,
Thank
let
you.
me
Right.
say,
Right.
C.L.
Because I
Franklin
need.
could preach his socks off.
And
Yes, he
sing,
could.
I'm gonna
and
say,
sing.
and I'm gonna say
Yep.
the positive. And he was very forward thinking in the civil rights, social justice issues. He was one of the few black pastors that supported Dr. King. All of that
Yeah,
was
Right.
true. But the show was about Riri, and the whole show was summed up to me who she was in two lines. The first one was when she said to the guy who played the horn, "Why have you never hit on me?"
Mm-hmm.
She said, and he said, "Because I love you too much."
Mm-hmm.
And
And
Mm-hmm.
then the guy who was with her and advising her as she was beginning to stand up for Angela Bassett. I mean, not Angela Bassett.
Angela Davis.
Angela Davis, yeah. Well, yeah, because Angela Bassett was young too. So as she was
Right.
beginning to stand up for all of those people, and he was there with her as she was discovering her, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud stuff. and he was trying to love her. And she said, I don't know how to do that. So
Right.
she was
So
willing to just have sex with the expectation that there would be nothing else because she didn't know anything else existed. I thought
but
that summed up everything about her as a woman.
Mm. Well, the fact that she was able to remain sane with all of the insanity that was
Right.
going on in her life and that she had been through, it took my respect for her
Yeah,
out of it. I mean, it just went to the stratosphere. I always respected the queen,
right.
but to see what she had to go through to get to where she was and then to try to stay there
Yeah.
because everybody was pulling from her.
Mhm.
Everybody, dad was pulling from her husband was pulling from her,
Her
the man in her
siblings.
life was
Yeah.
pulling from her,
Her
her
siblings, the
children, her
racism was
siblings,
coming for her.
the racism. I mean, the issue with giving her producer credit from her, with her label, and she was being told. It's a wonder that it's a wonder that she wasn't something more than an alcoholic and a
Right.
chain smoker.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
So
they
that
just
brings me into the sexuality piece. When we look at young Riri and young adult Riri and then middle aged Riri, we see how how she dealt with men shaped by her early life. Her sexuality, which the way she thought about relationships, all of that was informed by the predatory way that she grew up. So when I was started watching it, it led me to this question about our sexuality. What informs who we are as women, how we see our bodies, how we relate to sex, not the not so much the act of sex. Yes, that's part of it, but is sex dirty to us? How do we perceive it? How do we go about it in a loving relationship? Is our sexuality healthy? What so I don't know what all of that is called. So Marty, here
that's a
you go.
lot.
I'm throwing it to you right here. Explain what I am trying to say about sexuality because I'm not talking about the necessary act of sex, although we're going to talk about that because it has to be talked about, but sexuality of women.
Are
So
you
so
talking about
and
gender?
Nope.
no,
Marty's
no.
going to define it in
So I'm going to define it. Sexuality and what Val is talking about sexuality as a noun because
Okay.
it's a noun and it's a verb. The verb would be the identity, like what we call ourselves and what we identify as. But the noun is the capacity for sexual feelings. That is what the noun definition of sexuality is. And so an example would be she began to understand the power of her sexuality.
mm,
That's an example of what sexuality means. So sexuality means how does she perceive herself through the eyes of, what does she feel like people perceive her through their eyes and how does she perceive herself? It's about perception.
so if you
It's
were going to
about your
throw out a
perception.
question for us to grapple with our own
Yeah.
sexuality, what might a question be?
What aspects of your sexuality do you value?
Hmm. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Um,
So we're
you
looking at
know,
this as a noun. Go, is that Sammy?
Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Um, so we're looking at this as a noun, and I think I still may be off. So if I veer off, help me. The first thing that popped into my head is being Kojic
Okay.
and how the Kojic church doesn't at the time I was growing up, let me be very careful. At the time that I was growing up, the Kojic church did not address sexuality in any helpful, healthy way. All that I was taught was a good girl doesn't put out. But if you don't, but while also hearing, if you don't do it, somebody else will. If you want to keep him, this is what you have to do. And that veers into the act. In terms of sexuality and the Kojic church, a woman wasn't good enough to stand in the pulpit. That's how I grew up. A woman, you could deliver the word, you could evangelize, but you couldn't pastor a church. It took them to the end of the 20th, almost the 21st century, before they acknowledged women as pastors. That's the Yet we were supposed to be not behind Adam, but beside him. So how can we be beside him if we're not good enough to teach? We're not good enough to bring the word. And yet when you read the word, you see these women. My boyfriend pointed out Jesus pulled women. He pulled bold women, audacious women. No matter what their standing was, they boldly pressed to Jesus. If I can just touch the hem of his garment, doesn't the dog get the crumbs from the master's table? My kid is sick. Can you help me? So you and the removing of the stone. So I ended up with two identities of what am I supposed to be. I'm supposed to move forward but step back as a woman. That's my sexuality. I can cook, I can serve, I can be an usher. And there's you can't okay, we'll create deaconesses. We'll allow that because that's biblically sound. But you're not gonna deliver. You can't get up in my pulpit and preach. You can't guide my people. You can just teach a little bit. You can do Sunday school, teach, be a brilliant Sunday school teacher, Bible study. But as far as being a woman, your role is servitude. Even though I genuinely believe we're all here to serve in some way, shape, or form.
So does that mean that your sexuality, that biblical upbringing that you received, that you feel your sexuality is to be subservient, to
Yeah,
serve and not request what's best, what you want, but to serve what he wants?
right.
Okay.
Because we're taught what? The virtuous woman, but no one ever presses the fact that the virtuous woman had help. You're supposed to do all this stuff because look at what the virtuous woman did. But you missed that little tiny space where it said, and she had her handmaidens help her do XYZ. So we're not supposed to do things alone. We are stronger. We are truly stronger together. That's the other piece. Like, it's taken me some time to break out of that, to learn how to ask for help.
One
To it,
night we will have to do a conversation on our faith and how we see ourselves as women. And I do understand that our faith influences also our sexuality. And Viv made a good point there. Sorry, Fancy made a good point there when she said, her sexuality is to serve and not be served, even in sexuality. Anybody else? I mean, what to
Can
answer
I can I
Margaret's
just
question.
can I interject here for a second? Because what Viv kind of was really talking about, it wasn't sexuality more than it was how she views herself through the eyes of the Kojic church.
Mm,
So basically, a person's identity in relation to the gender or genders to which they are typically attracted to is where you get into the verb part of sexuality.
okay.
So I want you to, so Viv, I want you to think about it as others are answering, because maybe we can come back to you. What is, what do you value in your sexuality? What is valued by you in your sexuality? And that's what I want to get to. Your sexuality is how you identify, basically.
So
It's
why don't
how
you
you
answer it
identify.
first and help us out?
So what I value the most about my identity is my ability to be independent and also be able to help people at the same time, and knowing when, and working to find that balance, to know when I assert myself to be independent, when I assert myself to be able to help someone else. That's what I find that's most about my sexuality, is my independence
You're
and my ability to help. So if
okay.
that makes sense to anyone. um
Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Because it seems complicated.
Sammy, Lori.
As a noun, right? As a
Yeah.
noun, yeah.
I guess, when it comes to sexuality, I like to separate it from, I mean, sex obviously in my mind and where I've been raised is that it's a gift from God. Um, but at the same time, it's not, I don't like to say to myself, okay, well, my sexuality is only determined by some man or whatever. To me, sexuality is an individual thing. Sexuality is what I own my sexuality. It's a gift. And it's not just the actual act. It is a feeling. It is who I am. It's the essence of me. I enjoy being a sexual being and I don't take it lightly. It's not something I give away easily at all. I look at my being, my body, as like a diamond.
Mm.
Before anybody can come and handle the diamond, you got to first take some gemologist classes and you got to approach it with some white gloves before you even consider. I value my sexuality. I know what it means to me. I don't take it lightly. And I've had some friends that they'll say, hey, they have what they call maintenance men or whatever, or,
Mm.
and that's not something that, and again, it's no judgment. Everybody does what they want to do. That's not something that's comfortable for me because again, it's like my body and my sexuality is a prize. It's the essence of who I am. And before I share that, that person has to be fully vetted. It's just like I have to be in a long-term relationship before I am comfortable with sharing the essence of who I am with anybody. So my sexuality in my mind is something that I own. I believe it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. It's precious. And I've always kept my sexuality separate from the teachings of church only because many times when it comes to religion, as we know, is man-centered. The church will say, "Well, this is how you should be," and blah 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 blah. No, 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 no. A long time ago, I used to get into that, and I found that I was suppressing myself.
Mm.
And it's really about spirituality. Now, of course, religion is, of course, the customs and things like that. It is important. It is important for us to have a church family, of course, but to not let the church totally take over and tell you who you are. You know who you are. You know the person that you are. And I own who I am as Lori, and I know that I'm a sexual being, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it, but I'm also very, 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 very careful with it. I know I see it as a prize. So the long and short of it is I'm very comfortable being a sexual being, and I value that. I value it very much.
Sammy.
I think that being a sexual being or your sexuality has to deal with a lot of your foundation of how you were brought up, I guess. And I think that sometimes we don't know our sexual powers, or um, we don't know who we are as a sexual being based on either you can throw church in there, you can throw how you were raised, you can throw in uh, uh, different things about your foundation that you build on as you get older in your mind. So for me, I am a strong Black woman that have been through so many things that creates who I am, including my sexuality. If you are, if you had different things, church, if you, anything like being bullied or teased or harassed or um, anything that has damaged you in your childhood could affect your being of who you are and who you feel you are, or how much of a sexual being you might feel that you are. I've never thought about my sexuality. I've always and to piggyback on Fancy, you know, it's always a like a tug of war of what you should do or how you should be or how you should feel. They try to, I mean, people try to put you in a box. So, but for me, I am confident in who I am. I know who I am now. I know that I can make a difference of of the person that I become, but that comes with a lot of um. Oh, we can use Aretha for example. The things that she went through in her life and how she conformed to make it better for her, like you said, and not go crazy.
Yes.
She used what she had to try to make it better for herself. We go through things, women in general go through so many different things and different aspects of life to find a journey of who we are, how sexual we can be, who the approval of others, what we should do, what we should not do. So my question is, I guess, as a sexual being, because I think I hear so many different things. Like Lori just said, what she described to me was a sexual kind of thing, almost as if my stuff is good.
Hey,
But it is. That's what she
I didn't say that, but
hey,
I'm not
let the
doubting it
truth,
either. Okay.
look,
But
let the
let's
truth out, girl.
but
Tell the
let's but can I go
So
back? Let's but Sammy, it takes us back to the noun definition of sexuality. It is the capacity for sexual feelings. That's what the noun definition is of sexuality. So she's saying that she understands that she's a sexual being. She owns it and she's walking in her thing. And you're saying what I hear you saying is that you are conflicted about what that actually is based on your religious beliefs, your experiences, and something it's not something that you really gave a lot of thought to because you
I
were dealing with other things.
correct. I've never given a thought to my
Right.
sexuality. I've never, because I've always been pulled in so many different directions,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always been pulled. And just to piggyback, like Lori, she knows her stuff is good. Well, I know mine is good too, but but does that does that equate to, I guess, coming from Fancy's point of view, how does that add up to, I guess, the things that you've gone through to build that foundation about yourself? Like, I can't really put it in words. I
Well,
can't put it in.
let me also mention this. I mean, like I said, now, like I said, with sex is the actual act, which like I said, I'm comfortable with that. And
Correct.
let me also say this: it's also an emotional thing. I've went through a lot of work over the years. Let me tell you that.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
Lori you see today is not the Lori from 20 years ago.
Right.
So I had a lot of baggage that I've had to go through over the years. And this is the thing I always say to Valerie, and she knows what I'm gonna say. When my mom passed away, I became a different woman because of my mom passing.
Mm.
And it's like I blossomed. But this was a long time coming. But I knew over the years, there was a lot of things that I went through that I had to go through. And this is where I am. So this, what you see is work. This has been a long standing amount of work. I was
But
the same. I was the same way where I was very uncomfortable with who I was in my own skin.
mhm,
Sexuality was just something where it was like, I don't want to talk about it. Leave me alone. I'm abstinent and whatever. It took me a number of years, but it was just also this manifestation of me. I can't really
mhm.
describe it other than to say it's like the person you see today is not the person I was years ago.
Now,
Right.
Lord,
And
you
I,
said sexuality was the capacity to what?
To capacity for sexual feelings.
For
And this is what, so I want to take this back to Aretha for a minute.
okay.
I want to make a point, and maybe this will put this in context for everyone here. What I hear from everyone here is that they have had an opportunity, whether it was encouraged or whether it was not discouraged, but you had an opportunity to decide for yourself. Aretha didn't have that opportunity.
So let me go
Her-
back to that,
okay,
and before you
go
go
ahead.
further,
Uh-huh.
because I didn't answer the question because I was trying to get a
Mhm.
feel for it. How I see myself sexually now as a sexual person at 56 is very different than how I saw myself as I grew up. My first encounter with verb sex was through molestation at
Mhm.
almost 5, not quite 5 years old. And while I didn't know my parents handled it the best way that they could. My mother took me to counseling way back then because she was concerned about how that would um, impact me, and I didn't realize that it did impact me. Um, what How it impacted me was I understood at some point as a girl before I should have understood that my sexuality, my ability to be a sexual being, held some power and control and manipulation and all of that stuff. And I would use it. Um, I would play with it. I would tease with it. I would put myself in bad situations because the sexuality that we possess as can't deal with a man because I'm not a man, that we possess as women, even when we're girls, the flirt, the things that girls do that they shouldn't be doing because they have too much information before they should have it. That's what happens when your development is interrupted by sexual abuse, right?
Exactly.
That played a big part in my life.
Mhm.
So I could
well,
go ahead. Go
Valerie,
ahead, Jimmy.
I don't mean to cut you off, but for me, it was the opposite.
Okay.
So because I was fully developed at 9 years old,
Mhm.
and men preyed on me.
Mhm.
And so, you know, for me, I was the exact opposite. I was like, you know what? I'm not wearing any bathing suits anymore. I'm going to try to cover up as best as I can. Maybe they won't see how big my breasts are, or maybe I can hide my behind. Um, so I just wanted to state that I was the exact opposite. So I'm sorry, Valerie. I
No,
just want
no,
to throw
I
that in.
get it. But as I grew up, I mean, I think a healthy sexuality helps you make good choices, good emotional choices for yourself. And it took a long time for me to have a healthy sexuality. I got to the point when I got a little older that I could use men just like they would use me and think nothing of it. They could be gone, because men could do that. Yeah, don't, roll out. I could be the same, not understanding that it was damaging me. Um,
Mm.
and I'm going to say that I probably did not come into even being married twice to a healthy sexuality. But I understood, yes, as a woman, sexuality does have its power. Um, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to be woman, to be a sexual person. We are a sexual being and not use it in a way that hurt me or think of it in a way that hurt me. There's a gospel song that Leandria sings with Donald Lawrence, "Deliver Me." Because
Mhm.
because all I seem to do is hurt me. That song
Mhm.
has been a mantra to me. It wasn't till I got to a place where Lori was talking about, where I understood that I was special, that I am worthy. Because when stuff happens to you young, whether I think, Sammy, you deal with it from being promiscuous or covering up, it
Hmm.
devalues you.
Correct.
And it can make you say the very thing that Riri said, but I don't know how to do that.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what this looks like. Yeah.
And that's the point that I wanted to make for those out there who have been sexually assaulted, which she was ravaged, she was manipulated, she was abused, all of those things. Anytime a 12-year-old child is having a baby and then having another one at 14, it shows you that when things are awakened before they are supposed to be awakened, it creates promiscuity,
Mhm.
and it can lead to, I'm not saying that it does, because, and again, and let me just say this disclaimer, I am not a sexual therapist. There are therapists that specialize in that area, but just from the point of trauma, I can identify because I deal with people who have trauma, whether it be sexual trauma, emotional trauma, but this creates traumas in those areas. And wherever typically there is trauma, there is a form of what we call interruption. You know that story that they had, girl interrupted.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
Basically, that's what it is. It's girl interrupted. You're no longer a girl when that happens, because those sexual
Right.
feelings awaken things, and then those who would prey and manipulate, that attracts them, even without you knowing that you are attracting them. But then when you realize you're attracting them, then you start using it in different ways that could be harmful, because you don't have the mental and social maturity to do it where it's supposed, because it's meant for the marital bed, according to
Right.
our belief, our biblical beliefs. So when these things are used out of their context, and when they're not happening where they should be happening, and they're happening before and they're happening prematurely, this is where we get into a person who doesn't know anything else but the act.
Mm.
Hmm.
That's when it becomes damaging. Like you said, Val, you could act like, we women, we weren't necessarily made to hit it and quit it and keep moving. We're emotional beings in that sense. And the older we get, the more we realize it and we accept it, because it's about an acceptance. Aretha did not even have an opportunity to choose her own sexuality. It was chosen for her.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was awakened way before its time. And
Yeah.
I feel like that was the tragedy in this entire story. The fact that, first of all, the people who were supposed to protect her were not there to protect her.
Mhm.
Remember, Mama was basically put out of the house. Mama wanted to leave and take the kids, but then Mama was kind of ostracized from the house. Mama
Right.
was protecting her, because I believe if her mama was still there, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Right. And that's what Sammy told her. If your mama was here, you wouldn't have a baby at 12 years old.
So
None
and
of
so the people that were supposed to protect her grandmother couldn't do but so much,
Hmm.
because she was dependent on her
right.
son.
That's right.
So she can only go but so far. Yeah, she smacked him in the face really
Hmm.
hard, and I was glad for
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
But she did smack him and say, I told you not to take that girl, but you didn't stop him. You didn't
Right.
put your foot down. You didn't say she's not going. And then the other piece that broke my heart with all of this in this movie was when he took her out of school.
Mm.
She was smart. She was promising. She was very on the way to becoming a supremely educated and well-rounded individual. She had the arts, she had the education. I mean, she was really on a very, very good track. But I just go back to girl interrupted, because
Mm.
it was interrupted. And then
Mhm.
her life took a completely different turn. And then when she was dealing with those babies, oh,
Hmm.
I think something is wrong with him. He keep crying. Well, you
Mm.
a baby trying to do a baby,
Mm.
Right.
baby trying to raise a baby, because her mama wasn't there.
Right.
Her sisters didn't know, she did stuff before her sisters. And then I go back to that thing with her dad. Her dad playing the favorites with the children, because he created
Right.
a lot of conflict, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Why was he so into Aretha because the other two sisters could sing too.
Yes.
But
So
he
again,
saw,
there were so many levels to this particular biopic. I will tell you what, it was good TV.
It
Yeah, it
really
It was
was.
was.
tragic.
It'll be interesting to see because you know that there's another one coming up
Yes,
starring Jennifer Hudson. So
yes.
it'll be interesting to see, what that story tells. But I'll say this about Aretha: like I had no idea about the background of Aretha Franklin. I mean, I always just knew her as she was just amazing, gifted singer. But the one thing I can say about her was she knew her gift throughout
Mm.
all of that. She knew her gift. She knew I'm good at this. This is what I do. I've been blessed with this great gift. I just admire that about people that they know what they are here on this earth for and they stick to it despite what they go through. Like I think about Whitney Houston. She had a gift. She went through hell on earth, but she knew her gift regardless. She knew her gift. And the same thing with Aretha. It's just like that was just so amazing. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this next one with Jennifer Hudson, what that one's going to be
Yeah.
like.
That's the one that she read, Green Light. I'm
yeah,
curious to see if
I
she's
think
willing
we're
to
going to
tell
see
us.
a lot more watered down version. I
Oh
think
yes,
Jennifer Hudson one.
that'll be about just the music. Let's face it, that'll be just
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the music.
Yeah, because Jennifer Hudson is a belter. She's gonna belt
Yes,
that music out. We
right.
didn't get now this young lady, she had a decent voice and she could play the piano.
Yes,
Uh,
but she
It's
could
decent
not.
at that. But we're gonna really see, like you say, I think that's gonna focus on the music. It's gonna be
yep.
Jennifer. I'm waiting to see Jennifer. What you want? I'm waiting to hear her
Yeah.
just belt that out.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well,
she gonna
Aretha
tear it
picked
up.
her. So Marty, I have to ask you the question: what is the result of an unhealthy sexuality?
Well, the result of an unhealthy sexuality can lead to many hazardous things. It can lead to addictions, whether it be sex addiction, drug addiction, addiction to people. We saw that addiction in this movie as well. Aretha had a very abnormal attachment to people.
Hmm.
She would get herself attached to people who she knew they really didn't mean her any good, but she just felt like she had to have somebody.
Mhm.
She
Ted.
was like she didn't really know how to be by herself until much later in her life. And even then, she still had a man. Even before she passed away, she still had a man that
Yeah.
she was dealing with. So I'm just saying she didn't really ever know how to be by herself and have a healthy individuality, like get to know yourself, get to love yourself. I'm not saying she didn't have self-love, but what I'm saying is she never had that ability to be able to really take the time out to search and find out who she was on her own and then go seek out the relationships. It was always the relationship first and then everything else came after that.
So
So
when
that
your
is what
girl
can happen.
interrupted, Marty. So when your girl interrupted, and
Yes.
I believe that happens. I believe what's the statistics are high, right? If there's a room full of 10 women in a room, black or white, room of 10 women, a great deal of those women, a high percentage have experienced some sexual abuse. Some girl interrupted.
At least half.
Yeah, at least, right?
At least
So,
half. So what happens is the other thing that happens, like I say, addiction. So substance abuse, and that was another piece that was kind of watered down in this movie, but you saw it clearly. She admitted that she had, because she went to rehab
Drinking problem.
for alcoholism. You could see she drank, and everybody was used to her being drunk. And that was when other things would take place as well. That was when a lot of people would take that advantage of her. Look at her husband. Look at even what was the guy, Bill Wexler or whatever the guy that was.
Jerry
He,
Wexler.
yeah. He was like, here, take a drink. You're upset. Take a drink. That was her go-to. That was her coping mechanism. So you begin to create what we call maladaptive behaviors. You create unhealthy behaviors to deal with in an effort to deal with or mask what's actually going on, the pain that causes, the pain of the girl interrupted. It's not the fact that yes, you were raped. It's the what went into that. That was a power system. That's a power structure. Rape and abuse and different things. It's about power. It's about
Mm.
manipulation. So you're not necessarily ever really dealing with that because particularly in the black community, what happens here stays here, right? We don't talk
Right.
about it amongst people. That's our business. And she was very private about that, especially about the father of her children. She
Right.
didn't want to talk about that. This is what happens in the house stays in the house. And because it's not talked about and not dealt with, then you're dealing with all these maladaptive behaviors to deal with your problems in life. So that creates even more problems as you go along.
So, in layman's terms, for our
Mhm,
audience, I've done work and I
mhm.
have a therapist, and I think everybody should get one. But for anybody listening, and if you've experienced the term I'm loving right now that Marty introduced, if you've experienced girl interrupted, what do you how do you begin to acknowledge some of your behaviors that are coming out of that interruption in your life? Too much too
Well,
soon.
well, the first thing you have to do, you have to be willing to acknowledge it. You have to really know that something is not right or not healthy or not going well with what you're doing. You have to realize that, for some people it becomes their normal. So when you come to that epiphany to say, you know what, I'm not happy, something's not right, I'm missing something, there's something more, I need to do more. When you decide that that's what you want to do, first of all, you have to be transparent with yourself and admit that there is something that's going on with you. You have to admit that whatever took place took place. You can't keep hiding behind different things or different people to cover that and mask that. So first of all, you have to acknowledge. You have to confess. This is what's going on. No, this is not normal. This is not healthy. You have to know that it's not healthy. The second thing you need to do, you have to figure out, what do you want to do about it? Are you just at the point where you're going to contemplate? Okay, I'm just going to sit here. Okay, I acknowledge it. I acknowledge that there's a problem, but you're still engaging in those unhealthy or maladaptive behaviors to mask that. So acknowledge it. What are you going to do about it? Thirdly, then when you get to the point, okay, maybe I need to seek out some help because this is something that maybe I can't do on my own. Maybe I need to seek some help out. So this is where you go and seek the help. You go to a person who is qualified to help you, which would be a licensed coach, therapist, however you want to do it. If you're gonna get into therapy, you're gonna have to know you're gonna get into some work. It's
That's
gonna
right.
have to be some work. Therapy is unlearning these toxic behaviors. It's unlearning these maladaptive behaviors or unhealthy ways of dealing with your everyday life and its problems. If you want to coach and somebody say, that a girl, you're doing great, then yeah, get you a coach. That may not help your situation, but some people are not ready for it. It depends on what you're ready for. But if you're
Mhm.
ready to do the work, get yourself a therapist, get somebody to help you, partner with someone, have some
Mhm.
accountability to help you get through this.
So I'm
And
going to
then,
switch gears just a little bit.
mhm,
And
okay,
because, I think you and I were talking about this earlier before we, started
okay,
the show. But so I talk to women often, as we all do, right? We got our girls and we talk about sex. Now I'm talking about the verb, the act of sex. And it seems to me that the sexuality, the healthy, the now part can greatly impact how we enjoy the verb. So
right.
I know a number of women that absolutely hate to receive oral sex. Yes, I know some women that will not give oral sex. I know women that think if a man asks them or if they will not participate in doggy style. Um, so they have all of these
Hang-ups.
hang up. I'm trying not to call it a hang up because I don't know if hang up sounds judgmental or is it just what people like. But how is it
Preferences.
preferences that so many women, really, you get to 30, 40 women in a room and you're talking and there's so many hang ups, so many things that's not good or they're very uptight about it. And I know that both Viv and Sammy hit on that with some of it comes from our religious backgrounds and upbringings. Some of it comes from our mother or father or our family that sex is bad. I think my great grandmother told me. My great grandmother was friends with C.L. Franklin and
Mm.
knew little Riri. Little Riri was friends with my father. Because my great grandmother was a preacher. When she got married, she did not know what sex was, and the ladies of the church set her down and told her that that her husband, just let your husband do his business.
Mister. Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Right? Okay. But of course, she's way older than Color Purple. And
Right.
then she said she went to church after some time, and the ladies pulled her in the kitchen and said, Lillian, you're with child. And she was like, with child, you're going to have a baby. She was trying to figure out, well, how did that happen? So
Mm-hmm.
she said that, as some time her stomach began to grow and these weird things were happening to her body. And she looked at herself in the mirror, trying to figure out how the baby was going to get out. So she
Ooh.
opened her mouth up as wide as she could to see, well, how is it going to get out of here? She knew how big a baby was. She saw babies. She said she had no idea that the baby would come out of her vagina. I cannot even imagine how horrifying that was when she found that out. And so she found it out. Long and the short, my great grandmother had two children. When she
I know
figured
the
it out, she had a well. That's where they kept things cool because her ice box was not where she wanted to do this, and she had to figure out a way to, when he was getting ready to do her business, to make sure that no babies would come. So she hid lard in the well, and when she thought he was going to want to do his business, she packed lard in. It worked, y'all. I don't know
Wow.
how many
First
infections she must have had, but
IUD, the first IUD.
that was, she said,
right.
a block. But I
Spermicide.
can imagine when I listened to her, it occurred to me that she never enjoyed sex. When my mother talked about sex, it was completely different. I remember there was a song called Do It the French Way that came out in 76 or 77. Do it the French way. I would go around the house and I would be saying, put a knick-knack in your mouth and get a bang. And mommy said, Valerie, come here. I was like, yeah, what's up? What are you singing? Do it the French way. And my mother said, what is the French way, Valerie? Do you know what you're singing? And I said, yeah, do it the French way. And my mother said, Valerie, that is about oral sex. Pause, y'all. What is oral sex?
Right.
Now, my mother would just break it down. She had no problem telling you anything you wanted to know. So I could not learn uptight from her because that just wasn't a thing. She said, well, oral sex, is when a man either, she tells what a man does and a woman does such and such. And I remember my response. Why would anybody want to do that? And my mother said, you're too young for that right now, but one day you're going to love it.
Wow.
I
Come
think
on,
that
mama.
would make a big difference. And when that time came into my life, when I would encounter that, the way that she spoke of it was very different experience for me than what my great grandmother was taught.
Mm.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking, so our sexuality, the noun piece and the stuff that happens, the interrupted, the noise that we hear in the culture that we hear, and from your mother, your father, your grandmother, sex is bad, will play out in our verb sex. So I guess the long and the short, how do we get it? And so we can have healthy and exciting sex lives with whomever we choose to be with, without the hangups without the society and you a hoe, with all of that going on. How do you do this?
Well, one of the things I think that everyone is hit on, like I'm processing what I'm hearing, but one of the things I'm believing, and I've believed this for a while, acceptance of who you are, being comfortable in your skin, loving who you are as a woman, the things that women can do that men can't do. I think women are wise. I think that we are nurturers. when we choose to be, um, we are strong in that. Like even though, like even Aretha, she loved to cook. She loved to have people sit at her table and eat, and present it in such a way that you did think you were the guy from Time Magazine said, I thought it was catered. No, I cooked. You've been invited, and that's a level we all know everyone doesn't get to receive. Um, the reason I think Val is amazing is because of the way she will prep a dinner table for guests when people are coming over. Child, woo, you having a function? Valerie comes through. We're gonna put this here, this here, this here. Oh, this will look lovely here. I have some flowers for a centerpiece. We'll put some of these around the room, and then she covers the table so that nothing gets on the table to um, disturb it. And that's an invitation. You've been invited into a Southern woman's home, and she's going to feed you, and the meal is delicious. And she revels in that. That's part of being, if you cook, that's part of it. I can do this better or equal to someone else. I do it well. Not just, that my loving is good. I'm good. That's what it means to be
Okay.
us. We know that we have that life and death lay in our hands. We, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. That's
Mm.
us. That's us.
I see it. I certainly identify with you, Fancy, when you talked about that, because that was Aretha's way of showing love.
Mhm.
That was
Right.
her way of showing intimacy, her
Mhm.
cooking, meaning that she cared about you. That was her
Right.
way of showing you that she cared about you, because she was girl interrupted, so she didn't learn the language. That's the
Mhm.
first thing we have to do. We have to learn our love language. We have to learn what works for us. And then, like Lori said, like Sammy said, Val, you said it, Fancy, you said, then we have to accept who we are
Right.
and walk in it unapologetically. And we have to learn to communicate with our partners, whatever type of relationships that we're in. We got to learn how to communicate what works and what doesn't. And let me say this, as a person who deals with behaviors, our preferences, our barriers, our likes and dislikes, they evolve as we get older.
Mhm.
They evolve. What I liked 20 years ago, I may not be able to handle 20 years
Right.
from then. I may not be able to do that.
I would sure
There
try
might
though.
be some
I would try.
physicality
I would.
things going on.
I would try.
Right, right. You gonna try, you gonna be broke down too. You gonna be exhausted.
Look,
I would
I'm in
try.
bed
But
at
what I'm
9 o'clock. I'm
saying,
watching.
but what I'm saying, and I'm being facetious when I say that, but I'm saying, we continue to change and evolve. So we have to allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to do that too. Something I may not like today, I don't know. I may like it later on and down the road, because again,
Right.
as I mature and I evolve, it's going to change. And so I think that's how we find the balance. It's
Right.
acceptance, first of all, and then it's understanding what it is that we like and learning how to tell people, nah, that ain't gonna work. I
Right.
Right.
don't like that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Learning our love language and what it is that we like, and learning our partner's love language.
Right.
Is it the touching? Is it the gifts? Is it the adoration? Is it, what is it within those love languages? And we have to find that out. We have to take the time, and it takes time, like Lori said. It takes
Right.
time. It's not for everybody.
Right.
Everybody can't get into the inner sanctuary.
That's
Right.
right.
Because it is a form of worship. It is a
It
sanctuary.
is.
It is
Girl, she
intimate.
said it's
Right.
that's what Lori said. Lori
Yeah.
said you got to get to the
Yeah, she
altar.
did.
Absolutely.
That's right.
You gotta come, you gotta take the class.
That's
You
it.
gotta come with the white gloves, and there's gonna be a pre-test first. Like, I'm serious.
Right.
You have to do that. And
But
I hear women that'll say, oh, hey, it's just sex, and they want to be and think like men. I don't want to be like a man.
We
I want
can't
to
be.
be.
Even when we try, it
Can't be.
doesn't work.
We can't be. Exactly. It's
Mhm.
about being comfortable with who you are and in your own skin and being confident enough to say to somebody else, this is how I am. This is what I like. This is
So,
what I don't like. And be
so
okay if they cannot understand or not willing to, abide by that.
Go ahead,
Bye.
Sammy. Say what you want
so
to say.
with my girl interruption,
Mhm.
because of the things that I went through, and it created a lot of fear in me. So then the next thing, I was the bully. You wasn't gonna get over on me no more. I was gonna stop a hole in you, and
All
on
right.
purpose. And I carried that. I carried that up
Last
until my
week.
Last week.
Sammy will cut you. I'm not kidding.
Get it, Sammy. Let them
but,
know.
My girl. My
but
girl.
but because that I'm growing and
Growth.
I'm not who I was 20 years ago, it's a difference. It's a difference. And so now I'm learning to love me. And
Yes.
even though I don't have to accept crap, I don't have to cut you to get you to understand that. I can just say no. And I can say it nicely.
Or
So,
That's right.
but
And
yeah,
it's about self-love, and it's
that's right.
about understanding self-love, and it's about that confidence with saying, you know what, it's okay if you don't like this.
Right.
And it's okay to say goodbye, and it's okay to say, hey, that's okay. It's not a
Yeah,
big deal. It's not going to be the end of the world,
right.
because we see things in different perspectives now, from a different perspective. And
Yeah.
my thing is, my biggest thing is, don't waste my time
Yep.
Yeah.
right.
or my energy, because it's important. My energy is waning, and so it's
Amen.
very important. I'm very particular and intentional about how I spend and expend my energy.
Hmm.
And I'm not just, that's not just in a literal sense. That's also in a spiritual sense as well. I
Right.
don't want to waste my time and waste precious energy and time on something that just is not meant to be.
Right.
Right.
I
So
ditto that. But yeah.
ditto, ditto. So
Yeah.
that is actually, this conversation is a difficult conversation, and it's one you have to process. So even for us that are right here on this call, so everyone listening, I hope you heard something. I hope you had your journal ready. You can write down some notes. And if you are struggling in this area, I mean, we all suggest counseling is a wonderful thing. I wrote
Therapist is
down a
beautiful.
couple of questions from a couple emails that I got,
Oh,
that was coming from our most listened to show. And thank you, audience, has been our girl chat with online dating. And we went off into what we want from a man and what we're not accept. We did the girlfriend thing for real. So the question on the table was, I can't even understand my own handwriting. One of them was, are I said, and a couple other ladies on the show said that we were going to try online dating for 4 weeks. Have we done it yet? No, I haven't. Anybody
no,
else?
Shame, shame, shame.
no.
Well,
And I'm
I
sorry to the audience. I'm really sorry because I said I was going to do this months ago. So I am going to set up a profile, and I'm going to be up and rolling no later than June 1st. And so that by our anniversary show at the end of the month, I can have something to say about my experience. Um,
I'm I'm
Marty, how
currently
about you?
Marty.
Life, life happened to me this past month, so I'm gonna say probably by the mid or end of June.
Okay.
I'm gonna commit
Okay.
to that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, ladies.
Okay.
Holding
The
you to
other
it.
question on the table was for you, Lori.
What?
Yeah. This
How?
is Lori. They wanted to know how you were doing on your
uh,
how are you doing with your dating?
Oh, wow. Well, I shared in the last podcast when we talked about online dating. this one guy that I met that I was really hoping, wow, okay, this is really
Yeah.
starting out great. The second date, we went downhill. That was the
Yeah.
end of
You
that.
shared that.
I recently met a guy. As a matter of fact, Tuesday of this week, I had a lunch with a guy, really nice guy, taking it slow. But what I've learned with online dating is that whenever I go out with somebody or interact, I'm not always thinking, oh, this is somebody I'm going to marry. It's simply about, hey, this is somebody I could be a possible friend. This is someone I could go out and go to a movie or I don't always see every guy the same because every guy serves a different purpose, for
Hmm.
the most part. So my online dating life is still going. I still enjoy it. I like the idea of simply meeting someone to have intellectual conversations with or go out. Not necessarily, hey, I'm trying to find someone to marry. I'm in no rush. I'm in no rush, but still looking.
Okay, the
Okay.
last question that I wrote down to ask. There's four questions that I got, but here's the last question I wrote down to ask because I thought it was a good personal question for LOL, living out loud. They said that we seldom talk about wanting a man in our life, wanting to be loved and to love, and they wanted to know where we were at, wanting to be have a love in our life and love someone, each of us.
Oh.
So, go, Sammy. You can
Huh.
go first.
I can go first.
Okay.
Right now, I am not wanting. Uh, my last relationship was kind of crazy, so I'm really taking my time. It's not like I am hopeful eventually, but just not right now for me.
Okay, you are
Yeah.
hopeful, so you do want love in your life and to love
Oh, most
someone,
definitely. Who
but
doesn't
just
want
not
that?
right. Well, no, because there's some people say they don't want that,
Oh,
and
I
they were
mean,
just
yes.
asking.
But my whole thing is if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not going to kill me if it doesn't. Like I'm content with my life, but it'll be good to have a partner to share with. Sure.
Okay, that answers the question.
I
Mark.
have to, I certainly piggyback off my girl Sammy. Absolutely. I believe in love. I believe in the sanctity of marriage. I believe in the sanctity of healthy relationships. And I believe in the sanctity of getting to know people and taking my time with getting to do that. And so until I run into that individual that is on the same sheet of music that I'm on,
Mm,
it'll just be, I'm not going to go out of my way
hmm.
to, I'm not going to be desperate, thirsty, or whatever you want to call it, to, oh, I must have somebody here, because you know what? I'm learning to love myself more and more each day through this process. And as
Hmm.
I learn more about myself and learn more and how to love me, I can teach somebody else how to do that as well. Because if we don't know how to love ourselves and we don't know what makes us happy, we're not ready for a mate. We're not ready
Hmm.
for a partner. So I feel like we can use whatever time we have by ourselves constructively in the meantime. But certainly, absolutely, who wouldn't want a partner? Who wouldn't want someone to love them and treat them as their equal and as their better half, so to
Hmm.
speak, and someone to go through life and share life's liabilities with. Absolutely. I would love to have that. But until that time comes, I'm going to be content wherewith I am. I'm going to be Paul. I'm going to be
Mm,
content where I am, and continue to work and do my other things that I've been wanting to do and needing to do in the meantime. Um, and until that happens, until my paths cross with that other person.
That's right.
Fancy girl, you want to take a stab at the question or
sure. Why not? It's interesting that that would be the question because someone asked me just today if marriage was the prize for me anymore. And I had to be honest and say, no, it was not. That companionship, a healthy relationship, absolutely. Um, but I spend a fair amount of time on social media, and I watch sometimes possibly the facade that men put up when you're not wife material if you don't do XYZ. And I'm like, oh, you want a maid? That's not a wife. And so finding someone who will, I should also preface this by saying I'm in some type of quasi relationship. Um, we finding somebody to love you the way you deserve to be loved, and sometimes love you in a way where you are not aware that's how you need to be loved. You're not you're not sure. It's a lot. It's a lot to get to that point. It's a lot of work to care for yourself in such a way that someone will love you that way. But I don't want to be I'm not lonely, and I'm okay being alone. That's the weird part. It's like I'm okay being alone. I'm okay with this person loving me and expressing that to me, and I express it back because I love them. But I don't want to get married. I don't know if I would make a good wife. And that's just me being honest. I don't know if I'm like, truthfully, not based on any um, list that a man might put together, but just in my own mind, what a good wife should be. And I can be very self centered. So, how do you bring that into a relationship? Because right now, I need to be self centered. I got less than a 10% kidney. I, I need to be focused on my health. I can't make you dinner or get your socks, do the laundry. I'm I'm having I'm having issues. Some days I get winded just walking to the door. So how do I maintain a relationship? I'm not I'm not ready. I am honestly not ready. Not for marriage, for sure. So that's where I'm at. And I met the guy online, by the way. I met him on Twitter. It was, and he's 17 years younger than I am.
Mm. She tried to get her back knocked out.
Honey, I sure was. I ain't even gonna lie. I
Oh
sure
my
was.
goodness.
Lori said, "Oh my goodness."
Wow. Well, I'll say this. I'll say this. For me, I'm happily dating. My end game is marriage. I'm very comfortable where I'm in my life. Like you said, Fancy, like I'm content, you know, being single, living alone. But of course, my end game is I do want to be married. I do want to
Mhm.
be coupled. That is what my end game is. And I feel I'm ready for it. I'm not rushing it. I'm not forcing it. But I'm comfortable where I am. I enjoy dating casually, like I'm doing. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm open to it. Definitely open for love, and I feel that emotionally, I'm definitely ready for it.
See, you did the work,
I
and
did
most
the work. I did
and
the
most
work. I'm out here and I'm just going.
And
So
we're
yes.
rooting. And we are
All right
rooting.
now.
I'm gonna go
I'm
ahead.
not giving it away. Let me just be clear now. Come on now.
we're not giving it
We're
away.
very clear you're not giving it away, White Club.
We know.
Mhm.
I, on
I'm
the
gonna
other hand,
answer. I'm just gonna answer before we close out. I have been married twice, so Fancy used the term that I use often. Marriage is not necessarily the prize for me. I've had the prize, and I've been disappointed with the prize. Nothing's
mm,
wrong with marriage, let me be clear. But what I want to experience, I can actually articulate this thing as a whisper, as a hope, or as a prayer. I would love to experience what it's like to be loved. I have no problem loving. I am a great wife. Matter of fact,
yes,
I
you
will
are.
marry me. I am a wife.
Yes.
And I would like to know what it's like to have a man who loves me. It doesn't even have to be a husband at this point, because I've been married twice and loved not once.
Mm.
Right.
So I don't want any woman listening. I'm not, I am all for marriage. I am team marriage. But please don't get marriage confused with being loved.
Mm.
Because there are many
Exactly.
people in
Ooh,
marriages and they are not loved. They are
right.
roommates in a house. They can't wait for the other person to die. Marriage and love are not synonymous with one
Mhm.
another. So
That's
I desire to be in a healthy, monogamous, loving, committed relationship. And if that goes to love, and it's gonna have to be the Gideon fleece wet, the Gideon fleece dry. I'm gonna
Yes.
need these parts on this month. I'm gonna need all of that to get me to marry again,
Mm.
because I am tired of giving myself and it not being, because a lot of people, I won't even say just men, a lot of people are all about the taking. And I'm unwilling to be taken or tooken.
Mhm.
It ain't even a word, but don't take me anymore.
Right. To
So,
That's right.
and like the other ladies have stated, at 56, I can honestly say I like me. I
Mhm.
am healthier than I've ever been. Um, I'm excited about my life. I believe God has some great things in store for me. And if I never experience what it's like to be loved by a man in a romantic sense, I can be okay with that. But let me just add this to all of us who say if it doesn't come, I still believe that God gives us desires of our heart.
Absolutely.
And if that's what your
absolutely.
heart desires, and that's what you will experience. So I'm not even going to give the enemy time to connect to that statement that said if it doesn't. So scratch that, because I'm not letting that word come out of my mouth. If the desire of my heart is to know what it's like to experience being loved, then I serve a God who will do that for me
Man.
Right.
Amen.
and for every
Yeah.
sister on
Okay.
the line
Yes.
and every sister listening. There is someone out here who, a man or a woman, whatever your choice is,
Yeah.
who will
Preference.
love you. But be
Right.
careful not to waste your time with somebody that does not have the capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've
then
done
part
it.
of that, I think, is being able to love them back. If you can't, if you can't connect with someone who puts into you and you can't put into them, like some days we all have bad days. But if all you're doing is taking, then you don't need to be where you are. That's not the balance that you're looking for. That's a servant. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a healthy, balanced relationship
Mhm.
where you support one another, submit ye one another. Not It's not just one sided. So we out here. Look, we out here.
Yeah. So, audience, thank you for those questions. I always ask, send in questions when you look at wherever you listen to your podcast. It'll have where you can support the show. So if you want to support the show, you can. It tells you where to send any questions or ideas for shows that you may have. So there'll be another show coming up soon. The anniversary show is coming up at the end of June. And in that show, I'm going to tell you a little about what have I experienced on my online dating. And by then, Marty might even have a couple days in where she can tell.
Yes.
If it's nothing more than setting up my account, I will read you my profile. But
Ooh.
hopefully, I will have something to say, because it's going to be a good year.
Yes, it
That's
is.
right.
So you notice that the year didn't start till we're almost halfway through for me, because I just got
Hey.
vaccinated.
Hey, it's
So to
still
my
saying.
guests, thank you so much for agreeing to have a hard conversation. Um, I love having you on the show. All my guests did not realize that they were going to start a podcast. So what's happened is they've actually all started podcasts, but I have some of the baddest sisters that come on this show that are bold enough to share out loud. And that's living out loud. So again, LOL family, thank you for tuning in. And in the words of Dolly Parton, find out who you are